Hi and welcome to Promethean Bryce. Today is the Valentine's Day special, and for this one we've chosen to do Stripperella from the sort of fun cartoon back in the day, which didn't last very long, but it was a pretty cool character to do, so I thought that's the one I'll do for Valentine's Day. As always, it's just going to be a straight through commentary of what I did, how I did it, when I did it, and just a basic overview. If you want to see anything in depth, I do now have a full tutorial ready to go. So just go check that one out. I'll link it at the end of this video. But let's just get straight into it. So as always with these, I've just gone straight into doing the base set layer, whereas that's where I've got a sphere. I've subdivided it a couple of times and then remeshed it, put it to the side as you can see in the video there. And then I Control C, Control V it over, copy it over, and make each base section of the body everything that's gonna have a movement, because in these videos I'll do two versions: the animation version, which is will be in the T pose, and then a posed version where I'll get those bits that I've modeled earlier, move them into a particular pose, change tiny little things about them for muscle mass and stuff like that, and then have a full pose version ready to print off, because that's the majority of what I'm doing for now. I will eventually get into doing the proper animation ones though. With this one in particular, I quite like the end result, so I probably will put that one on the or buy me a coffee. So I'll put that one on there. I always have a sort of not safe for work version, but on this one in particular, I've done another special version. But you'll have to go into the site to see that if you want to see it. But as for that, like I said, we're just getting every part done. Doesn't have to be too in depth. It's also basic, just getting that very rough shape. That's what you want to do. From the, as always, like I said, with the reference, I've just used a basic reference here. This isn't, as you can see, it's not Stripperella herself. It's just a body I felt that was similar in shape to the character. Once I get to the point, I'll show you where I've changed it. But yeah, so we're just getting that general feel: hands, feet, legs, arms, body. And then a general shape for the face. What I've done with the face is I've not used an exact reference. I've sort of had the pictures to the side and then sort of used that Stripperella face from the comic or the TV show, and then used a Pamela Anderson to the side and got that. But this is what I was talking about. So after that, I've kind of resized everything because she's quite a lot taller than the reference I was using. And there's a few little sort of bits like the waist there where I've shrunk it in a little bit. And once I've got that size, which doesn't take long, I'm decreasing the remesh and then adding the details in bit by bit. And I'll just do that by, just like I did with the base section by section, cutting in muscle definition. On this one in particular, I've tried to keep it quite low because the cartoon version never doesn't really have that much over detail in the muscle. You might notice that it's a little bit more than what I'm saying, but once I sort of join them together, you're going to lose some of that detail. So I'm just kind of putting those lines in there to know where the parts match up later. And then as I'm smoothing it out, when they're all joined together in the later process, it will lose some of that definition, but keep that overall look. I mean, it's pretty hard to explain, but when we get to it, you'll tell from sort of a mile off. And again, like I said, I've had to decrease the thinness of these sort of ankles and legs just because they're a bit thinner on the reference. Later on, I will add a clothes reference, but that's the only one I really needed to see in software. Otherwise, I just typed in Stripperella on Google, trying to find some good reference, and because it's quite old and obscure, it was hard to find legit reference. So most of the reference I used was varied from stuff like DeviantArt and people sort of fan arts, which is where I sort of got the idea for the second pose. But the pose I'm going to be using on this one, sort of the pose from the DVD front cover. Again, I'll show you when I get to that. So yeah, as always, I'm just sort of trying the best I can with the hands. One thing I keep noticing that I keep forgetting to do, which I was kind of corrected in this one, and from, this is actually the latest one I've done. There's a few I've got on the way that are edited, ready to go. So there might be a couple after this which are not as good quality, but that's because each one I do gets better and better. And with that, what I was trying to say is that the hands, you just need to make them a little bit thicker, because when you join them together in the end and smooth them, it's going to reduce the size. And it's something I even forget about, and I've done it quite a few times now. But yeah, like I said, and then a similar what I said on the last video, you need to really color it as you go along, because if you do it the method I just did, it takes a lot longer to go back and recolor it. Because on this one in particular, I made a bit of a color mistake, so I had to change it afterwards anyway. But if I'd done that straight away, I would have noticed. And then I could just, build one basic shape, color it, then do it. Just like I said, just a time saver. So with the face, I've just, I've done it a few times now. I can get that general shape and then add stuff to it and then just edit it from what I can see to the side of me. Like I said, I'll have a tablet on with the reference of, say, Pamela Anderson's face and the Stripperella character. So I've kind of done it a little bit more advanced than the cartoon, but similar, more similar to that. But as you'll see as it's going along, I'm constantly editing stuff, moving it around. Especially when you haven't got the reference, you're going to be doing more sort of moving up and down, cutting in and out, replacing stuff, just because you're never going to get it exact the first time. You can only really get it exact if you have the reference, and which is why I always say, if possible, get the reference in, and if you can get the reference, get the front and the side. Don't worry about any 3/4 or like that. As long as you've got the front and side, you're safe. And then with the eyes, what I do now every time, because it works the best, is just masking the eye shape, inverting the mask, and then digging in to the cutting into that, and then remeshing it, and then adding the eyelid around. You can also cut that out if you really wanted to. And then it's just changing those shapes around to match around the sort of spherical ball, so around that shape, almost like an oval. Again, this part takes a while to get used to, especially when you do it the first couple of times. And then I'm just sort of there, for example, I was filling in some cheeks with the add tool, um, just because I thought I'd cut it in a bit too much. So sometimes you can just use the move elastic deform tool to sort of move things, but then sometimes it's not possible, so you have to add some extra texture. This is what I was saying, where I changed the color of the skin color because it wasn't the best. But I think I did change it again as well, actually, in the end. But yeah, so and then there, for example, I missed a little bit out. But yeah, like I said, I've got the reference to the side there, which is just a cartoon reference, and that's the one I'm using for the hair and the clothes, so I know which part I'm doing and when I'm doing it. And then I'm just trying to mimic that as best I can, as well as sort of, again, using your initiative and um, trying to get it matching to your very specific version. Because obviously, especially without the reference, you're never going to be exact 100% exact. So you've got to use a bit of your initiative to get things, the ball rolling essentially, and get stuff looking similar. And as always, I've added if you've watched my tutorial video, you'll know this. I've added like a base here, and then I'll add the rest of the sort of strands and stuff out of that as I'm going along. With these things, I always find you got to think to yourself, it may look wrong now, but it's because as you're building with anything in art, you're building upon it. So it might look flat at first, but as you keep adding layers and layers, it's going to look better and better. So you just got to stop your sort of a bit of advice to sort of newcomers, sort of your inner voice saying, "I want to, is it good enough?" But you'll get there in the end. So you just got to push through that sort of barrier and keep doing it. At the end of the day, if you get a final piece, you just got to practice and just continue practicing, because no one ever really starts off perfect anyway. And the only reason I say that is because it does drop in your mind every time you're doing anything. Have I got it right and stuff, even when you're good enough to do it. And like I said, every one I've been doing, I've been getting better and better. So it's going to happen with you the same. Just stick with it and keep going down, if that's any advice I was going to give anyone. And then with this here, I'm just getting that one piece to the side and then editing it all the way across. A, it gives it a similar look, which it's meant to. And B, it just makes it easier for A, already having the color, and B, already having the shape. But you can now see, like I was saying, where things are really coming along. So with the eyebrows and the eyelashes, I do these similar, where I get a mesh like always, add them into the shape that it should be, and then moving it around. And then as you can see, that I've changed the sort of bits of the nose. Because once I got that hair in, you can sort of, once you get more in, you can see the character coming alive more, and you can see where there are mistakes. Like I noticed the nose was a bit more wider and up. And that's why I do the eyes and everything as well. Not just because it looks cool in the end and it has a cool final result, but because of that. And then, like I said, I've done here where I've done. This is pretty difficult to do. It takes a while to get used to because you've got to constantly remesh and bend um, the sphere until you get that shape. You constantly remeshing, sizing, adding, taking away. And these ends will bend, will stay sort of where they are. So you have to sort of smooth it to curve it around the eye. I've explained this sort of in the other female tutorial that I've done. And then you just put copying one over to the other. Didn't add any eyelashes on this one. Kept it sort of like a one singular eyelash, just because that looked cooler. So this is where I'm starting to get the body, making sure all those things are in line. And I do that a little bit special my own way, where I get a cube, I put it right in between the middle of the sort of chest and that, and then move everything so it matches. So where each one of those left and right faces are, they basically touch on each one. That way you know you've got the exact mirror. Now, I know there is a better way to do it. I don't know how to do it personally. That's just the way I know how to do it. If anyone can comment in this comment section if they know how, that would be great. Just save me some time. But that's how I do it for now anyway. So after that, I'm trying to get this t-shirt together. And because I use the extract mesh from the mask tool, I have to pre-join the body. So this is where you have to do it in parts. So make sure you're confident that it's the final result of the underbody before you start adding clothes, because otherwise you're going to get a problem where if you move these afterwards, it's not going to match. So just make sure you're done and confident that you can go forward. But like I said, it only really matters if it's clothes that are tight to the skin or slightly tight to the skin, because otherwise you can just grab a mesh and build the clothes around if it's sort of baggy. Now I tried to add that to the bit where it wasn't merged together for my pose version, because I didn't save out the file at this point. But at this point, so I moved it over, and at this point I'm now going and I'm doing it all as I go along. So to get that collar, I've just gotten rid of that hair by joining it together and then taking it away from the viewpoint. And to get the collar, I used a plane, giving a basic shape and round look using the mesh tool, because you can use it as the elastic deform without sculpting, remeshing. And then you just get in that shape, general shape of the collar, as you can see, and then just extracting. Now I had to extract this twice because I did something wrong at first that I didn't notice. But before you do it, you see where this edge is? You need to smooth that with the shift smooth, and it will actually then extract a little bit easier. So if you have a look, yep, see, so that's where I've sort of smoothed it, and you can see the neater edge. Now that it's got a neater edge, when you right click and extract normals, it will extract properly. Then you're just getting your final touches on it, coloring it in, and then if you want to, especially if you're doing it for an animation version like I am, you're going to have to join the two together and then remesh, and then smoothing out those edges so that it's now one unit. In the pose one, I didn't have to join them because they're both items to be printed, and you're not going to see that line. But if you're doing it for animation, you definitely want to join it together. And then with the belt, similar sort of thing. You got to move it around. If it's anything hard edged like a belt or a anything with a strong flat edge or flat front, try and use the hard surface tools like the cubes, the spheres, rather than the sort of moving it with the tools and then adding, because it's going to be messy. If you want it really sort of uniform, you're going to have to do that. So you've got to mix around with the tools. Don't just always use the mesh ball. Sometimes it won't work. So in this particular one, I cut out these bits, but in the second one, I left them. Just because I thought it looked better on the second one. And when you're extracting the mesh, it will say in the settings how much you want. Another bit of advice I'd say is go beyond about 3, just because if you're trying to cut in like I was there, it won't work very well if it's anything less than a 0.3. And then, like I said, I'm just doing all these belt attachments, all with the hard edge stuff, adding them in, and then colouring them afterwards. Just trying to get that look that I can see in the background there. So I'm basically zooming out every now and then to make sure it looks the similar. Again, you've got to use your initiative to make sure it's because like I said, it's not going to look the exact same. So you're doing that with the skirt, you're just using the cylinder, bringing it down, and then just moving it around as you saw before. But then when you do remesh it, it will sort of mesh up the edges. So always smooth the edges. So always make it a tad bit larger to smooth the edges on anything you're doing. So this is where I've done the sort of sole of the foot or the high heel. Sort of moved it around, added it in, and then I'll bring it out afterwards. Very basic, it's quite a basic heel and shoe. And then I will sort of redo it later. And then I'm just making the boot around that. So I'm using what would have been the foot. Again, I don't see the foot in this, and I don't need the foot in the reference, so I've just gone straight to doing the boot from it. Sometimes I will do the feet in, depends if, like I said, if I was doing an animation character where there was going to be, say, I don't know, a beach shot, and they were on in a bikini or something, then obviously you would see their feet. But if it's not like this, for example, I haven't done it, so she'll be in that sort of way, so I didn't need to do any feet. Just saves on a bit of time if you don't need to do it. Good practice if you are struggling to do stuff. A little bit of advice for people here: if you've extracted it like I did from mesh, don't use the top 2 tools to add. Use the clay, the add clay, I think it's called, but it's something like that. Where if you use that one, it will actually add a layer. That's it, add clay layer. If you add clay layer, it will actually add layers and not sort of push it out. Again, you'll have to be doing it to understand what I mean, but if you're at that point, you'll know what I'm saying. And then because the hands had gloves on, I've had to join the hands a bit earlier on this one. And then just doing the mask method, where this time I filled the mask and cut it out where I needed it, extracted it, and then recolored it. Again, this was quite easy. So, and then on this one, I pulled it out a little bit by just masking it, so we didn't move any of that middle stuff. And then edited the sort of bit that goes around the arm, the hand, sorry. And then I've just duplicated that over. If you can, best to duplicate stuff instead of redoing it. Saves time and it keeps it looking sort of symmetrical. So with the mask, again, same thing, you're using the mask for the mask. Get that shape, You'll see how the edges are all rubbish there. That's why I always say make it bigger than you want. Make it at least 0.5, I'd say, bigger. So when you reduce that, you can have the correct shape. And then I've just done the sort of leg section, which I did miss out at first. And it's just sort of like I think it's a gun holster. But I've just left the holster in without the gun like it is on the reference. If you want to add a gun, you can. But really and truthfully, if you mod one from a different project, you can always import that in as well. It's not like a character defining feature. And that's when I've looked at it and gone, well, that's done. So I've basically just having to just quickly merge certain things like the feet there, the shoes, add a few little bit of creases in that ankle. Then just making sure everything's correct. For example, I've had to move some of the the glove over where it's sort of overlapped. And then, like I said, I've just had to merge everything together properly and then smoothing it off. It's pretty simple to do. All you do is select the ones you want, join, and then either increase the value if you want less polygons or decrease the value if you want more. I usually want more, and then you're just using your smooth tool to smooth it out, the mesh together. And you always want to remesh it, like I said, because if you don't remesh it, you can still get it smooth, but the topology will be just off around the creases. So wherever you joined it, it would be sort of split apart in a different way. And it just doesn't look nice. It's not professional, so just remesh it. Simple as that. And then I'm doing the same with the head, so just joining things together and piecing it all together, because this is the final step really for the particular animation one. Yep, and that's what that was all done. Making very small little tweaks as I go along. But like I said, I felt that was done. As you can see, that's where I sort of moved some of the hand sections to make sure they were filled across. This is where you would use that add tool, just because it's going to increase the size around the finger, so it's not as tight. But like I said, I've just had a look around, and then I think that's done. So that's when I start the next one. So this is the pose version. And I wanted to give her a different face, where it's sort of a mouth was slightly open with a sort of cheeky grin. So all I'm doing is just grabbing the original one and redesigning the face. Once you get used to doing the face, that's the easiest way to do it. Slightly moving the eyebrows and mouth, adding in a sort of really simple layer of teeth, which is just because it's quite comic layer. I've just added one line. That's all I needed to do. And then I get rid of the other one, put the lips back in with the color. I left the other one to the side for this video just in case it didn't look good in the end. But I was quite happy with it, so I didn't need it in the end. And then I've used the clothes from the animation version in some parts, if they can be used. Like the feet were separate, so obviously I can do them. The mask was going to be the same pretty much, apart from small movements, so I kept that. It's another time-saving method. And then I couldn't do it with the gloves or the top, but I did try and use the skirt. I was able to use the belt that I made, but I couldn't use the skirt. I might have to remake that. So with this, I'm just moving the hands into the particular poses, which is one's just sort of flat pushing outwards, and then one's curved around a bit more. Yeah, for future reference, if anyone's watching this, I would have actually made those tip ends a bit smaller. Something I noticed as I was doing it, but I'd already settled on it as the final piece, so I couldn't really change it at that point. But it just would have been a little bit better. I mean, I still think it looks really good. Just a bit more accuracy if it was. Then, like I said, I'm just moving each section bit by bit. and trying to get the pose, which you'll see eventually. Sort of the legs a bit more wide. I had to bring that. Oh yeah, I suppose the holster over. Legs a bit more wide, and then sort of forward. Again, that sort of butt section is going to change with a bit of moving the moving tool, but that's you've got to imagine if you when your muscles move when you move them into, say, if you do a crouch or if you move your arms, there's going to be slight changes, and that's where you want to again use your initiative and move the already made mesh just to get it the pose exact. Still a lot easier than completely doing it again. Again, if you can't figure it out, just find a pose on the internet and try and find one, say, from a live drawing reference. But you shouldn't need to. Should be all right without it. Any pose should do, really. And like I said, just moving those slight things with the mesh back in a bit, moving that around, moving the pelvis around, moving that upper part of the legs, moving the neck a little bit, and then moving sort of the butt and the leg section. And then just with the, like I said, with the clothes, you're just doing the same thing. I try and save time with this, but it didn't look very good, so I had to redo it. So this, I eventually kept the belt the way I did it because that was fine, but the sort of cloth was a bit more. It was more hassle than it was what it was worth. So as I was doing it, I decided, you know what, I'll just start again from fresh. It took me a lot less time. It's I've said this before in previous videos, you've got to kind of pick your battles. If you can save time, great. But if you try and save time in some areas, you might find out that you're spending more time because you've tried to save it, spent half an hour trying to save it, realized that you can't save that time, and then you say doubled your time. So you've really got to pick your battles. If it's a major change, just start it again. That would be my advice. And in this case, it would be for the skirt would have been a major change. I didn't really realize at first how wide and changed it was going to be. So I'm just coloring all that stuff in now. I made the colors slightly different as well because I didn't have the reference for me to color pick. But if you ask me, I actually prefer the version I did myself anyway. I think the colors were a bit darker and a bit more accurate. And then just like before, I'm having to join certain sections together so I can take them off using the eye tool so I can focus on joining together this top section with the arms, making minor adjustments before I'm settled on it so I can do the shirt. But it's just the exact same method as what I did for the first time. It's just probably a little bit better of an outcome on the second because every time you do something again, the first time you do something, you have your mistakes and you have to redo things. But the second time you do it, you've got the idea in your head, so you can already sort of start it and do it smooth, which is kind of what happened here. Sort of knew how to tackle it, increase the things a little bit more, like I said, and then smooth it around. I tend to colour it before I smooth it around because you can't notice if it's the same colour as the skin or the whatever you're using. If it's the same colour, you won't even notice that it's pointed out. So I had a little bit of the outside edge on this. So I thought, add it in, remove anything I didn't need, invert it, and then extract it out a little bit. Not using the extract tool, but just sort of using the clay layer like I was talking about. And that just gives me a little bit extra to work with around the side. Looks a bit more proper this way, if you ask me. Again, it's stuff you don't notice the first time around. When you do it again, you notice things a little bit better and you make changes that have a better outcome, which is why the more you do, the better you get. And like I said, with this one, I didn't have to attach it together anyway. So it looks, to me, it looks cooler anyway. Just move a little bit of the hair around. And then we did it the same way around. We did the top and all that. And then we're just putting those hands together. Add in the knuckles a little bit, because sometimes when I've moved the fingers, the knuckles don't come through enough. So you just got to add a little bit extra. And then add in the gloves again. This time I just kept it round though. I thought it actually looked better this way. And then when you've done that, you do the same with the second bit. And when you merge them together, if they're close, the skin's close, it will merge, join. But because it's going to, like I said, it's a sculpture, it's going to print off that way. I don't need to worry about that. It will always join together anyway. Which is why you should always have things separated and open for like the animation version as opposed to the pose version. Then just making sure if it's joined together correctly. And then just adding all those extra little bit of joins, like I said, moving the knee a little bit and the sort of butt a little bit. Smoothing off. And then, something I forgot to do is that I noticed in the animation version it was fine because you couldn't see it, but I didn't give her any underwear on the other one. But this one you could clearly see sort of the whole of the backside, so I had to actually add a pair of underwear for this one. Which is what I did last. So just get the same sort of method with the top, dragged it all around, got that general shape, and then extracted it. And just this one, I just added black, so it wasn't really too much issue. Tried to make it sort of like almost G-stringy like because it's again it's Stripperella. So. But yeah, that's all done. Show the final result in a second. Just like, share, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you think about it. I hope you liked this Valentine's Day special. Go buy the model on my Buy Me a Coffee. The links will all be there as usual. I really do hope you like the final outcome on that one. And I hope to see you in the next videos. And like I said, comments for any characters you want to see for other videos and what you thought of this one. Thanks very much for watching. See you in the next one.